Hello class and welcome to this Ghosts and Goblins walkthrough right here on Video Games 101 by way of Let's Play with Brigands. I'm your instructor, Professor Brigands, and we have a truly challenging title to guide you through this week. Often cited as being one of the most challenging games of all time, and for good reason. We're going to go ahead and give Ghosts and Goblins the distinction of being the first ever 10 out of 10 here on Video Games 101. On the frustration scale, this equates to renouncing your faith and attempting to broker a deal with the devil. Which is convenient, actually, because the devil is in this game. Admittedly, it may be a conflict of interest, considering the devil is one of many enemies trying to kill you. Fear not, though, we have all the tips and tricks you need to succeed in this game. Blaze has a rare bestiary guide for one of the most challenging basic enemies in video game history. Gary's got all your boss beaters. Fluff has a number of interesting facts about this game. And yeah, we're going to walk you through this one step by step, showing the game through twice, as you need to beat it twice to get the quote-unquote good ending. Although it's still an NES game from the mid-'80s, so you know the ending's not going to be that good. It's more about the satisfaction you can and will feel when you finally beat this game. So let's take a deep breath, run the intro, and get into this Ghosts and Goblins walkthrough right here on Video Games 101. Alright, let's take a look at the controls for Ghosts and Goblins as Arthur enjoys a nice, relaxing date with his lady in the graveyard in his banana hammock, as you do. Arremer there on the side, and there's the devil taking our lady away. With regards to the controls, no surprises here. Down is duck. And one thing to mention on that is that you need to make sure that you've completely removed your finger from the down button before you try moving left or right. A lot of games you can easily transition. In this one, you need to come fully out of the duck position before you can move. Once you play the game, feel the controls, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's a bit stiff, but it's certainly worth mentioning. We're going to take the top route here as we take a look at the Briggs notes for this Ghosts and Goblins walkthrough. The keys to beating this game. First, master the jump, fade, and attack move. This is essentially just jumping in one direction. You'll notice that Arthur can turn in mid-air. He's very stiff. Once he jumps in one direction, he's committing to it, but that jump and fade move is incredibly effective. As you can see right here, we'll use it jumping in the opposite direction while turning around and throwing whatever weapon we have. Number 2, be precise with your attacks, especially with the fire here. Blaze will talk more about it, but you can only have so many instances of your weapon on the screen at once, so if you miss your target, you're basically hanging yourself out to dry, so be precise. And finally, know all the hidden armor locations. Every time you get hit, you lose your armor. If you go to one of these locations without your armor, you have a chance to get it back, so we'll be showing you all those. We'll be bringing in Blaze in just a moment to cover the items and weapons of this game. But we're coming up on the first boss. Watch out for these burrito ghosts, as I call them, as they spawn in. Sometimes they have items with those jars, but let's go to Gary for the first boss.
It's Scary Gary's Boss Beaters.
Alright, the first boss of Ghosts and Goblins is inexplicably named Unicorn. First, know that he's invulnerable against a shield. You probably won't have this early on, but you'll face him again later in the game, so keep that in mind. You want to attack him as you reveal to get some extra hits in like we show here, and then use the jump, fade, and attack maneuver which the professor mentioned, fading to the left while you're attacking, and you should take him out before he gets to you. When he jumps, he slows down, so that'll get you some extra hits in, and you should be able to take him down before he charges. Congratulations, you've beaten the first boss in Ghosts and Goblins.
Thanks, Gary. It looked about 8 hits took him down. So we are moving on to the second level now. So I think we'll start fast here. Got these little blue demons. Just kill the bottom one and just keep moving. They'll eventually peel off their course and abandon pursuing you. Just keep moving like this. Hardest part of this stage is the middle third, which we're coming up on here. There's going to be a bird on the right. Just burn it, toss whatever weapon you got. Alright, we have enemies called Petite Devils coming out of these windows here. Be ready to react quickly. Kind of is a bit random as to which windows they come out of. This section is very tricky. the house section because you have birds which are constantly flying at you. They don't always come in from the same side, and then you have these enemies are literally called big men. It's a big man right there. I feel like that's a missed opportunity considering they're the most goblin-looking creatures in this entire game, and yet we're not calling them goblins. The ones above, when they reach down, yes, that looks like they're vomiting on you. That's whatever it is, it hurts. It will melt your armor like everything in this game. The armor location for this level is on the left-hand side there on this top floor. If you don't have it, rub up against that wall and jump, and right up there at the top, and you'll get a fresh suit of armor. It will not come if you already have one, and don't do it if you already have one, because then when you try doing it, if you don't have one, like a second later, like you want to come back, it will not be there. So it's nice to have that in your back pocket though, because generally speaking, I mean, it depends on the enemy. These birds are never ending, but these big men here in this house, they are finite. So once we take one down, we don't have to worry about it. So if you lose your armor around here and you want to head back and go to the top left of the house there to grab the replacement armor, you can do that. Watch out for that red bird there. Some of the enemies can blend in with the background considering it's a very limited color palette they had. You have the little devil coming out of that window there, but as you're falling, just throw a weapon, you can generally kill it. Oftentimes it won't even hit you because of the trajectory of the platforms. We're gonna bring in Blaze with the weapons and the items eventually. It's just probably more in the second half when we're playing through the game again. It's just like to dedicate this first half to showing all the tips and tricks, quirks of each level here. Plus we have another boss coming up in just a second, actually. So let's throw it back to Gary.
Boss beaters.
Alright, 2 unicorns better than 1. Still scratching my head at that name, but again, still invulnerable against the shield. You want to attack once again as you reveal and get the extra hits in. So this one, the first one, is probably going to do a massive jump to the left. In this case, you probably want to do the fade to the right. Most of the time he won't come toward you. He'll get close and then back off. What you really don't want to do is go too far to the right so that you trigger the other one, and you have to fight 2 at once. You want to take down the first one, go back to the left, and then slowly inch to the right. Rinse and repeat the method. You'll take him down. The second one won't do that massive jump. Not too difficult once you take him down, the first one. Congratulations, it's on to level 3.
All right, thank you very much, Gary. So at the start of level 3, we want to get down, get low. Gonna be a bunch of bats coming in. We want to make sure we take out as many of them as possible to clear a route for taking out the zombies that are walking around. I recommend following this exact same track right here. Go up the first ladder, ignore this one. Be very precise with your attacks, like we mentioned the Briggs Nose with these zombies. Go down this one. We have a new enemy called Tower Monsters. Be as far away from this one as possible so you can still get your weapon off, and you don't have the one on the left attacking you as well, because we want to be able to jump over that bowling ball that they spit out at you and still have some room to come down without actually falling into them or jumping into a zombie. We have this special enemy right here. It's called a red Arremer, and we'll have Blaze explain. That's the basic strategy, but we'll have him go a bit more in depth as to how to deal with them, as they are one of the trickiest enemies in this game, or just video games in general when it comes to basic non-boss enemies. We have a suit of armor coming up. This is, I think, the one stage which has 2 suits of armor for us, 2 replacement ones. They're pretty generous on this one. And so we lost ours there. Thankfully the replacement isn't too far away. Watch out for the ghost that always spawns in there. If you just keep this pace, you can jump over these 2 ghosts. Climb this ladder, jump up these 2, and then jump back to the left, and the armor will spawn. Note that when you pick it up, 2 of these cutely named petite devils will show up. Be ready to hit them. Just gonna try to back up. Alright, there we go. We managed to spawn that red Arremer off. It's rare that you can do that. I recommend jumping off of this step so that you fall down at just the right angle. If you duck right here, another armor will appear. If you don't have one, it'll drop down to the right and you can pick it up at the bottom here. So I like to move toward the red Arremer there to force him back, give myself more room. Come in slow right here, otherwise he'll take some damage. But Gary?
Boss beaters.
Alright, the dragon. Note that the head is invulnerable against the lance, and that's where we need to do our damage. We can take away pieces of the tail and the body, but without a different weapon, you can't take him down. So learn the pattern which he generally sticks to, which is staying to the right on the 4th pass, going left and ducking and attacking, and then jumping as he goes low on the 5th pass. Just keep repeating this. You'll get enough hits in before he starts to mix it up too much to take him down. Just get those hits in where you can, and you'll take down the dragon, probably the easiest boss in this game.
Yeah, they're not too bad once you get used to that move set. Yeah, before we get into that boss, you noticed that I said if you move in toward that step up, you'll take damage. You didn't see anything there. You're thinking, Professor, what are you talking about? The game has a number of glitches as if it wasn't difficult enough. And this is the track I like to take for these floating clouds, by the way. Makes it easier if you nail it on the first go. Just kind of walk to the right here. There we go. There's an extra life down there, but considering we have basically unlimited continues, not a big deal. Just step on this one. Make sure we jump at the very edge, like right before we get to that red Arremer, right like that. So we put as much distance between him and ourselves as possible. Can avoid getting hit there. There's going to be another glitchy damage spot before the next boss, who also, coincidentally enough, happens to be a dragon, so we'll point that out, but alright, just keep moving here, move as quickly as possible. There's going to be some fire coming out of the ground right here. 2 quick jumps. And you see peels off, just do the jump. You can actually make that jump before that fire hits you, but you got to be coming in at full speed. Got another red Arremer here. I want to make sure there's none of these blue demons on the screen before I aggro him. Just going to run away, get those hits in. 4 does the job. We're going to come in very slowly to this ledge here so we don't take any damage. Just inching in. It is very cheap. I think the boss actually might not spawn until we pick up this statue that we got from, it's sort of like proof that we killed the Arremer. It's a little glitchy, but let's go pick that up. And come back, and the dragon should be there. Is it tied to the statue? I believe. Yeah, I think it is tied to the statue. Something just kind of glitched in for a second. A lot of glitches in this game. Alright, got the statue. You here this time? Alright. Same strategy as Gary laid out for us last time, getting these hits in where we can. Don't have to really worry about taking any damage until this one right here. We'll jump over him. Very effective. Just get those hits in on the face. There we go. Key's always worth a fresh suit of armor as well. Relatively short game, all things considered. Of course, you have to factor in that you have to play through it twice to get the full ending. We have our little Pez dispenser icon for Arthur. Alright, same idea here. I recommend a very specific track. Make sure you take out these skull heads in the ground before you get too close, otherwise they'll pop out and start jumping around. Not the most dangerous enemies in the grand scheme of things, but these blue demons are annoying when they have a little projectile, and they tend to spawn in like the burrito ghosts, as I call them. I think they're literally just called ghosts, or forest ghosts, or it depends where you run into them, but just kind of like little burritos to me. Yeah, this is a nasty stretch for enemies spawning in. Thankfully, we have some armor waiting for us up ahead. And there we go, there's the dagger, not a bad weapon. Yeah, I think that's how we'll do today's class. Bring them in. We're going to skip the axe. Have all our TAs come in, or at least Fluff and Blaze in the second half when we have a bit more time after we've laid out the general solution for just getting through these levels in general the first time. So these big men, still can't believe that's what they're called, but they will do a projectile shot at you if you give them enough time. They'll also run towards you very quickly, so you don't want to mess around with them. If you do not have a suit of armor at this point, one will just appear for you as you jump off of that floating platform right there, so it should be in good shape after that. We try to lure this big man over this way. Just have enough time that we can get to the top of that ladder and get some shots off at the very least, give ourselves a chance. Their movements are relatively random, as most of the enemies in this game. The burrito ghosts are deceptively some of the most challenging enemies in this game because you never know when. I mean, they're confined to certain sections of certain levels in which they can spawn, for the most part, with some exceptions, but you always have to be ready to stab one in the face with whatever weapon you've got. Next boss, Gary.
Boss beaters.
Alright, Satan. Invulnerable against the axe. Don't pick it up like they were teasing and tempting you right there at the end. But you want to keep this boss on the edge of the screen. It's kind of similar to the unicorn. And then just jump, fade and attack when he swoops down. Retreat under him to get to the other side once he passes over top of you. Repeat this strategy. Generally, he'll stay high enough so he won't hit you. You can duck if you need to, but for the most part, you should be okay. Get those hits in, take down Satan, move on.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, you saw they were kind of baiting us with the axe midway through that last stage. As if saying, pick it up, come on, it'll work. No, it doesn't work. It really doesn't work. Anything else will work, but speaking of weapons that we need, there's going to be a shield, which we need to beat the game coming up in just a second. Skip the lance. So we have a mini boss rush here. And don't have to use as much strategy when we have the daggers because they come out so quickly against that. I guess it's called a unicorn, but stay to the right here. This is why we don't want the lance, so we can actually take down this dragon. If you do have a lance at this stage, just go to the left and the shield will appear. You can just pick that up and attack the dragon with it, but it's a lot easier to take out that dragon if you get some hits in early before having to go over to the left, which puts you in a bad spot to defend yourself when that dragon starts flying around, so. Alright, so if we jump up against the left wall right there, then that's where the armor will appear. If you need it, you can grab it, you can go back and get it if you take damage, and what could be the hardest stretch of the game right here, because you have these big men, you got that skeleton jumping around, you have red Arremers in the wings on the left and right. You have to trigger this one. This is the only one you can't avoid. So I like to go up the stairs, or the ladder just a little bit to trigger the red Arremer, and then start fighting it on this floor. Now we're going to go back down and pick up that armor. We get to show you, actually, because we desperately need it at this point, as oftentimes you will. And there it appears. Yeah, don't go too far to the left. You can just go ahead and avoid the red Arremers. Make sure you have the shield. It's the only weapon you can beat this game with. They will send you back a level if you do not have it. It's very frustrating, so make sure you have the right weapon there. I'm going to try to lure the big man. That is why I hate the burrito ghosts. I let my guard down for just a second, and you can see how quickly we paid for it. It negated our armor we just got. I don't want to go any farther to the left because that'll trigger that red Arremer. Hopefully we can, and definitely skip that axe. They're really trying to mess with you at this point. And let's bring in Gary again for the boss.
Boss beaters.
Alright, 2 Satans is the exact same strategy. And like when we face 2 unicorns, we don't want to go too far to the right and trigger that second Satan. Otherwise, it's the exact same maneuvers. Just get him to come out to the left, duck underneath him, retreat to the right, and just get those hits in where you can, and with that jump and fade move, you'll take him down, and it's on to the final boss.
Gotta say, I don't like that they're difficult and trying to kill us, but I love the expression of the Satans in this game and the red Arremers. Just this very cocky smile that they've got going on. There we go. Excellent boss beater, Gary. Good luck. Alright, so if you have the shield, you get to move on to the actual final boss. Not sure why they still feel the need to just do this pan over here. We went up 1 floor at this point. There's the princess. She slowly backs away. Let's go back to Gary.
Boss beaters.
Alright, so I misspoke when I said the dragon was the easiest boss earlier. The final boss is far and away the easiest boss in this game. Make sure you have the shield, and then jump and attack his head. That's the only part where he's vulnerable. Just watch out for his fireballs. Just keep distance. Keep jumping. Fade to the left when you need to. Jump, attack, you'll take him down. What a joke. Congratulations, you have beaten Ghosts and Goblins, at least the first time.
That's true, thanks Gary. Don't smoke 'em yet. You're only halfway through this game, and the second half more difficult. Enemies are generally faster, maybe a bit less predictable, so... Other than that, everything else is the same, the armor locations and everything like that, so we'll take this second half as an opportunity to learn a bit more about the game, and actually I'm going to pick up that lance just so I don't have the shield for the first boss. And speaking of fun facts, let's go to Fluff for our first fun fact about Ghosts and Goblins. Fluff?
Known as Makaimura in Japan, which translates to Demon World Village, Ghosts and Goblins is a classic yet mind-numbingly challenging game from Capcom. As always with mind-numbingly challenging games, you won't be surprised to learn that Ghosts and Goblins was initially released as an arcade game in 1985 before being ported to a number of systems, including the NES the following year. While the original arcade version was designed to con the youths of the world out of their hard-earned quarters, Capcom felt they still had to punish their loyal console customers for making the mistake of paying them $30 for the take-home version of the game and didn't cut them any slack on the console version. It's not just a fun joke or an excuse. Ghosts and Goblins truly is one of the most challenging video games of all time and frequently appears at or near the top in countdown videos and lists documenting the hardest games.
And for good reason, thank you very much, Fluff. And now that we have a minute, let's finally go to Blaze for our items guide for Ghosts and Goblins.
Alright, let's talk about the items you will find in Ghosts and Goblins. First, we have the money bag. Worth points, not that big of a deal when you have unlimited lives and continues in this game. Secondly, this armor-looking item is worth points. Now, I know what you're thinking. Blaze, that looks like a suit of armor. I need a suit of armor right now. Unfortunately for us, Arthur is very particular about the armor he wears, which is ironic because not only is Arthur typically a banana hammock away from being completely nude, but he also happens to have objectively the worst taste in armor in the history of armor/history. Your entire outfit should never disintegrate if a bird brushes up against you, but I guess Arthur roomed with the armor in college or something and feels like he owes him one. Maybe he did after walking around the room in his underwear for a couple semesters, but better said, these are technically dolls which are shaped differently in each stage and are worth more points with each level, but again, not that big of a help. Moving on, we have the king statue, which can either be points or a frog, in which case it turns you into a frog for about 10 seconds, rendering you defenseless and offenseless. Be careful about picking this up. Then we have this token you see in a lot of early Capcom games. If it's flashing, it's time related, it can add or remove time, otherwise it's just a bunch of points. Enough with the points, right? Finally, or second to finally, we finally have the armor. Very important. This is tucked away at very specific spots. The professor will show you. This can be just what you need. The difference between getting killed in a banana hammock and surviving for 10 more seconds and then getting killed in a banana hammock. And finally, the little Pez dispenser helmet on a stick is the one-up. Again, very redundant considering we have unlimited continues, but there you are, the basic items of Ghosts and Goblins. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Blaze, as we return to go get our suit of armor from the top left section of this house like before. And while we're backtracking and trying not to get killed by a bird, which is apparently strong enough to destroy our armor, let's throw it back to Blaze right now, actually, to get his overview of the various weapons now of Ghosts and Goblins. Blaze, how about those weapons?
Alright, now let's talk about the weapons you will find in Ghosts and Goblins. Note that some of these you'll find spawning in specific, predetermined areas like the shield late in the game. Others you'll find in the pots which enemies drop. A lot of times it's an item, but eventually you'll find a weapon. There's a sequence to it. If you're not finding what you want, just hang around, keep taking out those enemies, and grab the weapon that you want when it appears. We start off with the lance, not a bad starting weapon, moves pretty fast, goes straight across the screen. We have the axe, which I like to avoid at all costs. It goes through enemies, it's very slow. The going through enemies is especially dangerous with some of the goblins that we face at the midway and later points in the game. Professor will talk more about that, but we then have the torch, which has an upside and a downside. I like the arc that it takes. It's a little slower. When it hits the ground, it lingers, so it pays to be accurate with the torch because otherwise you can only have 2 on the screen at once, and if you have 2 burning on the screen, on the floor somewhere, and you have an enemy charging straight for your face, you'll be utterly offenseless, so just keep that in mind. Next we have the knife, which you could argue is the item or the weapon of the game. It's the fastest. We can have 3 of these on the screen at once. It's like the lance, only it moves a lot faster, and we can add that extra one. And then finally, the shield, which you could also argue is the weapon of the game, being that you need this to destroy the last boss, or even get to face the last boss, as Gary will mention. This also destroys projectiles, most projectiles that enemies fire at you, so it has that added bonus, but there you are, the weapons of Ghosts and Goblins.
Good look, Blaze. Thank you very much. Yeah, we held the dagger for a brief couple of stages there at the end. Really is all that. You wouldn't think it. In a lot of other games, it's kind of forgettable. We just did a class on Castlevania 3 where the daggers, not all, yeah, you could do better, but I digress. We're going to take the same route right here, up the first ladder. Ignore the second one. Be careful when you're jumping. Just in general, because as always, Arthur is committing to a direction when he jumps. We're going to keep as much distance between ourselves and the monster tower as possible. Jump over that first projectile. Just keep firing. And you can see the rush, the speed of those zombies on this difficulty. And let's finally go to Blaze for the overview. You've been seeing us do it, but how do we take down these red Arremers, Blaze?
It's rare when we dust off the bestiary portion of my guides, but when you have an enemy as difficult as the red Arremer, you gotta do it. Run into enough of these guys or one at the wrong time, and you will wish that you would instead run into Warmek on his bridge. So, how do we deal with the red Arremer, one of the toughest basic enemies in all of video games? Can we scroll them off? Yes, it is possible, but very unreliable. If you're going to do it, make sure you get them off the screen immediately and wait at least 5, if not 10 seconds before returning the other way. And more often than not, you will see a very angry Arremer waiting for you regardless of how long you wait. So what's the strategy? The best thing you can do is to trigger them, have them coming off you, and do the jump, fade, and attack. Get a couple of those attacks off in the opposite direction as you're fading back, as the professor mentioned at the top of this class. They'll come at you, make sure you're ducking down. As soon as they pass over you, run in the opposite direction that they just went. Put as much distance between yourself and the red Arremer as possible. Jump and get some more attacks on them when they swoop down at you again. Duck on down, let them pass again if they're still alive. Repeat this process. It's a lot easier if you have a lot of runway to the left or right to work with. They're much more difficult when you're boxed in, working in closed quarters. But after running this many times, fighting over 100 red Arremers, this is the best strategy. Good luck with this very difficult basic enemy.
Yeah, basic just doesn't seem to fit the red Arremers, but we had that residual fire on the ground there, worked well against the dragon. Took out the whole body that time. You can see the only part which really matters is the head. The rest is just for making the entire dragon a bit more manageable. And while we're doing the relatively manageable start of level 3 with the platforming, let's go back to Fluff for another Fluff fact about Ghosts and Goblins.
Ghosts and Goblins has a sequel called Ghouls and Ghosts. The only member of the original development team was director Tokuro Fujiwara, with the rest of the team purportedly being fans of the original, most of whom had suggestions on how to improve upon it. Fujiwara worked on a number of well-known Capcom titles, including Commando, Bionic Commando, and the survival horror title Sweet Home, the latter of which served as inspiration for the first Resident Evil, which Fujiwara co-produced. Many of his games are notorious for their considerable difficulty. A legend in the industry, IGN ranked Fujiwara number 13 on their list of the top 100 game creators of all time.
Definitely made some of the most frustrating titles out there. So we're going to do the same pattern you can see right here. If you don't get the same clearance, you may have to turn around and hit one of those blue demons there. You see that one fire spot's a little tricky. You can slow it down and just make sure you touch between those two fires, which is where that item drops. It's a little safer that way, but yeah, now we're down in our undies once again, so we're going to come in very slowly, very timidly here. There's the dragon. Some early hits in. Thought they were going to jump up a little bit sooner, otherwise I wouldn't have jumped. That's alright. Getting a lot of mileage out of the attack, or the jump, fade, and attack move. It really is the key to surviving in this game, just staying away and keeping your enemies at length. And while we're headed to stage 4, another one of the relatively easier stages, let's go back to Fluff for one more Fluff fact about this game.
I mentioned Ghouls and Ghosts earlier. Ghosts and Goblins had a number of sequels since its 1985 release. This includes a number of games in the main series, like Super Ghouls and Ghosts, and the 2006 Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins, which saw creator Tokuro Fujiwara return to the series after a long gap to direct the first 3D graphics title in the series. There have even been a number of spin-offs, including a series dedicated to one of the most well-known antagonists of the series, the Red Arremer, as you play as Firebrand himself in the games of Gargoyle's Quest. Speaking of this character, the Red Arremer was one of the first components of the game, which would go on to become Ghosts and Goblins. The developers came up with this character before they even had a solid concept regarding the game or gameplay itself. They even worked backward and developed Arthur the Hero as an opponent for the Arremer. Regarding the unique name of the Red Arremer, the developers decided they saw something in the creature which reminded them of Ghosts and Goblins programmer Toshiya Arima, and loosely named the creature after him.
Thank you very much, Fluff. That was an interesting name. I didn't know if that was a weird translation or... No, that makes sense. All right. So this time we should get to see the armor spawn in, since we are in our banana hammock. There it is. Pop that on. I will say, Arthur is a master of putting on that armor quickly, which I guess makes sense when you lose your armor and have to put on a new set as frequently as Arthur does. You're bound to get pretty good at it. So anyway, coming up on the first Satan. We only have one to deal with this time. We're always coming from the left-hand side, so we have more time to react. Keeping him at length. Don't have the shield to bounce back his attacks. Got a little bit lazy there. Not really taking the single Satan all that seriously, and watch it cost us our first death right here. There we go. Working on a shutout right now. Let's see if we can keep this thing going as we got another extra life. It sounds like at 150,000 points. Speaking of which, $150,000 to anyone who knows the dirt that Arthur's armor dealer has on him. It's gotta be something bad. Otherwise he wouldn't keep going back to him. His exclusive armor dealer, but why? Anyway. Fire works pretty well for this unicorn, like it did on that first level when we first used it. Just get in the corner. Generally, you'll have enough time to stare it down. Alright, well that's the exception. Run this game a lot in the run up to this class, and generally I can get away with taking down that unicorn before they get to me on that right hand side, but not that time. Very close to losing our first life there. Grab the shield, obviously. Like so many games, this to get truly good at them, the difficult ones, as we get our free armor here. Gotta make this last. A lot of it just comes down to familiarity, muscle memory, and if that big man's gonna stay over there, I can't rely on it. But it's nice if he does vomit in our direction or whatever he does. We can destroy it with the shield. Alright, let's try to... He's right on top of us. Yeah, that wasn't gonna happen. Alright. Let's at least make it to the twins. Twin Satans up ahead. Gotta watch out. Yep. Speak of the devil, or the burritos. There are literal devils. So let's be specific. Speak of the burrito ghost. Alright, let's see if we can finish strong here. This is the last real test. Not too worried about the final boss. With a fresh suit of armor. And that shield comes in handy as doubling as an offensive and defensive weapon in that case. Just enough to get him on the screen. I just dig their general vibe. Still gotta put him down, but that worked out well, having the ladder. That's probably a good supplementary tip right there. Just be near a ladder if you need to duck. What's lower and better than ducking? Going down a ladder. As much as you need to right there. Alright. Be the most ironic time to lose this no-death run here in Ghosts and Goblins as the princess inches away. By the way, I'll wait till we do this. I just realized that was lazy. Come on. Thankfully, he doesn't get too close. Oh my goodness. There it is. Congratulations, this story is happy end. Thank you. And thank you, class, for attending. I was just going to point out that this is yet another example of the being the wise and courageous knight that you are. You feel strength welling in your body. Return to starting point. Challenge again. Well, hopefully you feel strong thwelling in your body as you are reminded that this is yet another example, an early example, admittedly, of the save the princess trope. But there you go. Our Ghosts and Goblins walkthrough. This felt good. Hopefully it helps you out. Huge thanks to all my TAs today for getting us through this, one of the most challenging games ever made. And yeah. Please subscribe if you haven't. We do one of these classes every single week. We'd love to have you enrolled. Click that like button if you don't mind. It really does help us out. And leave a comment. You're beating this game before, both times, and apparently they just drop you right back in this battle if you start over again. And then if you beat them then, I think they send you back to the start. Just curious at this point. So they just give you that ending again for some reason, and then they just send you back to beat it again. But we've seen the good ending. That's today's class. You're not going to want to miss next week's class. I guarantee it. If you've been following along, I think you know what I'm referring to. But until then, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week in the same spot for next week's class. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and comment on this video, and click subscribe if you haven't already, as this seriously helps me to keep making great content for you. And check the description of this video to see what song is playing right now.